right. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you guys. Welcome back to my YouTube show. For those of you who are watching in the US, good evening to you. For those in Asia and Singapore, really, really nice morning to you. Saturday morning over here. Nice, rainy, gloomy morning. So, thank you for those who are joining us, instead of sleeping in. We're very, very excited to have you here. And yeah, I hope you guys are excited for my next special guest. I look forward to these shows so much, because not only do I get to connect with my favorite saxophonists and musicians, I get to, share their stories with you as well. So that's really exciting. And for people who are watching from all over the world, it means a lot to be able to share this music and this, and ask questions and learn so much from these amazing artists. So I hope you're excited to hear not only Steve's music, but a lot of the stories and sharing that we're gonna speak about. So just gonna say hi to everyone who is here. I'm looking at YouTube now. So for friends who are watching on Facebook, you can click the YouTube link above and join us in the YouTube chat here. It's a lot easier for me to just look at one chat and get all your questions and comments as well. And hi Corey, nice to see you. And Maury, and do let me know where you guys are watching from. It's so amazing that now we are so connected. The world has become a lot smaller. So yeah, I'd love to hear where you guys are watching from. And yeah, my mom is here as well in Singapore. And Adrian, nice to see you. And Adrian has actually sent in some questions as well, so which I'll be asking Steve later. And so if you guys have any other questions, do let me know in the chat. We will compile them and then I'll ask them appropriately for Steve. And Maureen, nice to see you from Naples, Florida. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think yeah, hopefully you guys are enjoying your Friday night over there in the US. Hi Casey, good morning. And Wendy, Zach, Tony from Arkansas. Wow, that's amazing. So, I know Steve's music really transcends borders, so even us over in Asia, I mean, absolutely. For me myself, I've been listening to Steve's music for years and years and years, probably from the first album. It's just amazing. So I can't wait to hear Steve play live for you, live through the video format. But man, it's sounding so good. I was telling Steve earlier today that his audio setup that he's having at his home is really the best I've heard, so far. It sounds as good as if I was playing the CD right now. And going through the we use Zoom now, so bringing Steve in from Zoom, usually the sound processing is quite horrible, but we do our best and we try to make the settings better. And man, but Steve is sounding amazing. So can't wait for you guys to hear it. And let me see. Hey Kiwai from Malaysia, thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. And I'm gonna quickly pop into Facebook to take a look at who's there. I don't want to ignore you guys as well. But yeah, do click on the link on YouTube and then we can all have fun on that chat there. So yeah, do let me know if you guys have any questions for Steve, as well as if you want to hear any particular songs. We'll see if Steve has planned to do them already. But yeah, just let us know. I love the interactive element of this show, hosting it on YouTube, and the good thing is it stays on forever, so if you guys want to rewatch any parts or want to forward the link to your friends, it's going to be up there. And I think it's gonna benefit and bless so many people, and with sharing Steve's music and stories as well. So, I was thinking what would be a good way to start off today. And, Steve did an album. I think the album is called Moonlight, but later you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that whole album was so amazing. It was like with a whole orchestra, with strings. And man, I would love to, be able to record an album like that one day, So I always love Steve's rendition of Angel. And then it was funny that my wife actually just released a cover of Angel, that she sang on, and actually I played keyboards on. So I thought, hey, why not? A best way to just tie everything in and start things off. I didn't want to do something too too groovy or too loud this morning because it's really early here. So I thought I'll start off with a nice ballad. And so, yeah. Oh, hi, Doris. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us here. And yeah, I think it would be a nice way to start off the show for me to do a tune called Angel. And it's a cover tune by Sarah McLachlan. And hope you guys will enjoy it. right, there was a tune called Angel. Hope you guys enjoyed that tune to start off this show. You know, I really, really love that song. I mean, it's really timeless. You know, I think that song was written. Let me check that out. That song was written actually in. Let me see. Wow, the song was written in 1997. You know, so that's 23 years old. You know, and it's still so good. The lyrics, the melody, and yeah, and the meaning behind the song, I think it's really timeless. So I really, really love songs like that. I think that day during one of my shows, I was playing a tune called "You've Got a Friend," and I realized it was 50 years old. You know, it's just blows my mind. You know, the quality of music that has been written and has been recorded, man. And you know, if it's a good song, you know, if definitely, you know, last the test of time. You know, so really amazing. You know, and that's why it's so easy to remember the melodies to these songs. You know, I can't say the same for a lot of the music that is recorded now. You know, so let me say hi again in the group. And Adil, nice to see you. You say you're looking forward to watch Steve live. Got all his albums. Wow, that's amazing. Let me know where you're from, Adil. And Hilda, nice to see you. Good morning. Thank you for always being here with us to enjoy the music and the music of my special guest as well. Adrian says hi, Steve. All right, and Zach, thank you so much. Nice to see you. And Vincent, nice to see you. Tony, thank you so much. Really, really enjoyed that song, and hope it starts off the show with in a nice note. And yeah, let me quickly go to Facebook, and you know, Steve is eagerly awaiting. He's ready to jump on the show. You know, so let me see. Okay, Facebook seems a bit quieter for now, but yeah, if you guys are watching on Facebook, do join us in the YouTube chat here. And yeah, you know, without delaying this any further, let me get ready to get Steve on here. Okay, let me find the window. Okay, give me a minute. Okay, I minimized the Zoom window and now I can't find it back. Let me see. Okay, give me a minute. Ah, okay, there we go. All right. Okay, trying to unmute Steve. Technology is really. All right, Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so let me pull you up on the screen. All right, Steve, thank you so much for joining us in the show here. Really, really appreciate it. How are you doing over there?
I'm doing good.
That's
I'm doing
great.
good.
I'm bringing up your
Yeah.
volume here slightly. All right. Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time. I think it's about 9 p.m. over there in Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's about 9:15, right?
Nice. Yeah, so amazing. It still amazes me every time I do a show like this how, you know, we're 14 hours time zone away and a really really long flight, multiple flights, you know, is essentially,
I
but
know, right?
you know, now yeah, we get to invite you over here into Asia. And of course, there are many people watching from the US and around the world as well. So that's pretty cool, you know. So, how are
Cool.
things over there where you are now?
They're okay, you know. I mean, we're kind of in it, like everyone in the rest of the world. But
Yeah.
you know, trying to make the best of it, and
Yeah.
you know, getting really really acquainted with my wife,
Mm. That's great. That's great.
which is actually really cool. I don't think we've spent this much time together in a long time. So this is really kind of all right. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, trying to stay busy, making some new music, and just trying to keep on top of things and deal with what we're dealing with.
Nice, that's awesome. So, I think there's probably a lot of silver lining for everyone as well. More family time. More time
Yeah.
with spouses and all. So that's got to be great. Do you feel any cabin fever yet? Are you itching to get out?
I do miss some things. I miss going out for dinner because I'm getting really really tired of my cooking, and I think so is my wife. Um, and but yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that I could kind of get back into, but you know, this is the this is the hand we're dealt right now. So
Yeah,
we're dealing
yeah,
with it and doing the best we can. But
yeah, for
a
sure.
haircut would be awesome. That would be great. Uh, yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. Like, I'm really glad I have headphones on because uh, this whole situation is not pretty. So uh, yeah,
That's
I'm literally to the point where I'm starting to watch YouTube videos about how to cut your own hair. Yeah, so stay tuned for that one. That's that's going to be a whole special episode.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Do you miss playing live? Are you itching to get back on the road and get in front of the audiences again?
Yeah, it's way more fun to play the saxophone when there are people there in the room with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, my two dogs are really really huge fans, but even they're getting tired of me at this point. Um, and right now I'm involved in making a new album, uh, and so I'm kind of in studio mode. So I'm kind of kind of just kind of living in that moment right now, which is kind of solitary, and there's not a
Mm.
whole lot of people that are involved in the recording process. So I'm just kind of in that space right now. But yeah, um, I really do miss kind of getting out there and playing music and having people enjoy it and interacting with them, getting to meet them. I hope we can do that
Yeah.
very soon.
Yeah. That's cool. Any sneak peeks you can give or about the album, like potentially anytime, when is it due and when are you looking to release it?
That's a good question. My record company is asking me the same question. It's like, I don't know, man. Whenever it's done, that's when you'll get it.
Yeah.
The plan, and this is just the plan. The plan is for us to be finished with the recording in October, and then it should come out. Let's see, yeah, November, December, January, like maybe March or April.
Mm.
I'm guessing.
Mm. Okay, okay. And
If I'm doing my job right, maybe that's the thing.
yeah, actually I could just jump in straight to a question, and I was talking to you earlier this week and we were saying, maybe, speaking a bit about music business will be a nice change, because, we are
Okay.
both saxophonists and I think we both agree that for sure playing the music is a huge part. But
Yeah.
that's only the small bit that people see. So, maybe my question
Yeah.
would be, when you work with a record label, like usually do they give you hard deadlines or that's decided by you and then they'll work the marketing after that?
Yeah, it's usually a process that we kind of work on together because
Okay.
it kind of has to um, the releases need to not be in the way of too many other releases that they have,
Mm.
because they want to give attention and promotion and marketing and resources to each record, commensurate with what it deserves. So every artist, uh, they kind of stagger these releases, so all of the resources that need to be allocated to a record are able to be allocated to that. So we talk about traffic. How many releases there are, who's releasing when, and when is there a window.
Mm.
Um, and they want the record way in advance of the release date because they want a ton of time to kind of set it up. So,
Mm.
like for instance, I'm supposed to give my album to them in October, and they won't release it until March or April because they want 5 or 6 months to set it up. So there is a
Mm.
little bit of I don't know, maybe, negotiation that goes on there because
Okay.
sometimes they want it at a time that's just like, well, I don't know if I can give it to you then,
Mm.
and
Mm.
then you'll say, well, how about another month? And then they'll say, well, if we wait another month, then either it's going to get in the way of someone else's release, um, or it's we're not going to have as much time to set it up as we
Yeah.
want it. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a bit of going back and forth and a bunch of other things to consider when
Okay.
deadlines are set.
Mm. Like, how long in advance did you know about the October deadline? Like, how long did you have to prep for the album? You know.
Well, in this particular cycle, um, I was I was asked to, they kind of have to invite you back to make another record, right? So
Yeah.
you make one, and they're like, okay, let's see how you did, and then there's it's all in the contract exactly
Mm.
when they have to
Mm.
do this and when they have to tell you and when you have to talk about it. But
Okay.
in this particular cycle, they contacted me about a month ago,
Oh.
and
Wow.
it's like, hey man, you might have a bit of time on your hands. How about making another record? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And so it's about a month ago that we started talking about,
Wow.
that we're going to do another record together, and that they wanted kind of an October
Mm.
um, delivery date so they
Mm.
can release it 5 or 6 months after that.
Yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. And I mean, a 1 month, I mean, such a short timeline. So that would be about 4 to 5 months to record the whole
Yep.
album and get it ready. That's not, if it wasn't this COVID period, would there be a longer, time frame for you to work with?
I'm trying to think about, it doesn't seem so. If I have all of like January, February, March, April, or I mean, let's see, June, July, August, September, October. Yeah, it's about 5 months, 4.5 months, and
Mm.
that's plenty of time, I think. You know,
Okay.
um, some of the writing has been kind of ongoing. There's some stuff that I'd been working on previously, so it's
Mm.
not like we necessarily started from zero
Mm.
and and have to get up to full speed
Yeah.
in 4 months.
Yeah.
We had some material that was kind of in process before that, so it's a little bit tight, but it's all right.
Mm. Cool. That's
I
just.
say that now. October will come along and be like, "Where's the records?" Like, I don't know, man.
Oh no.
I don't know. So we'll see.
Yeah. How far along are you in the recording? What have you gotten done in the past 1 month or so? You know.
Well, so all right. So some things um, were kind of in the works, and then but when I got the word that yeah we're gonna go ahead with this, I I had to really get into writing mode seriously, right? And in order to do that, I had to spend a few weeks writing really horrible songs, just terrible, horrible, just that will never see the light of day. Um, and so I could get them out of the way and start writing the good ones. So yeah, I have a lot of really bad songs, and also David Mann and myself, another saxophone player who's pretty much produced almost every record I've made
Mm. Yes.
since 2000. We started collaborating, and once that started, the song started getting good. So so we
Nice.
now have a ton of really good songs, and now honestly we are just kind of spending a little bit more time writing, so we're still in the creative phase, and then we're going to take inventory of what we have and pick the
Mm.
best ones, and then get to the actual work of of getting all the arrangements done, getting all the
Hmm.
tracking done, and then
Hmm.
you know, making it into something.
Nice. So I'm guessing even before you started working with David for this album, you just went on your own writing phase first before you
Yeah,
brought the
yeah.
songs. Nice. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, and I love to hear about such processes, because it's always so interesting. And I hope those audiences who are musicians, hopefully can take home some of these as well. Insights from Steve himself. And I definitely wanna jump into another question regarding record labels and why someone should or would instead of releasing it themselves. But before I jump into that, maybe now might be a good time for Steve to play one of the songs he's recorded, and to
Oh,
start off some music for this show, if you wouldn't mind. So Steve, what will be the first song you've prepared for us today?
well, you know what? It's funny because I made a rookie error here, and I have to log back into my computer. Hold on.
No problem.
Okay, now we're back in business. Just so I can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna start out, with a tune. And I don't really play this one live yet. We had
Hmm.
every intention of live, and then that kind of went away for a while. So uh, I'm gonna play this tune. It's from my most recent album, and it's called Toronto, and it was written by David Mann.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we'll do that. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, that's really cool. Looking forward to it.
All right, let me get let
All
me let me
right.
get in the saxophone.
No problem.
Grab this thing and hopefully the read is still you know this could be interesting. All right, hold on
All
one sec. Here
right,
we go. Let me
no
get
problem.
turn on the magic.
Wow. Thank you so much, Steve. That was Steve on a tune called Toronto off his latest album called Gratitude. Man, that's sounding so good. And I'm gonna jump in
Oh,
on the yeah, man. And Adrian says, nice song. And what's the new mouthpiece? Amazing tone. And Adil says, first time watching Steve. That's awesome. And Adil asked a good question, which I will bring up later. But maybe now might be a good time. Adrian has been a huge fan of yours for years as well. And I told
yeah.
Adrian yesterday, I was like, man, you should hear Steve on this new mouthpiece. And I asked him to guess what it was, and he didn't get the right answer yet. So maybe Steve can share a bit more, and then I have so many more questions along that vein as well. So Steve, maybe you can share with us a bit of the tech side. What's your setup right now?
Well, I'm playing a Trevor James signature custom raw saxophone, and it's right here. And I've been playing this for a few years now, and I absolutely love it. I adore it. I haven't, it's a little bit of a shame because the horn I used to play and still play occasionally was my dad's horn. So,
Wow.
but I haven't picked up my Selmer Super Balanced for a long time, which says a lot about this saxophone. And Andy Snitzer is the guy who kind of hit me to this horn and introduced me to his buddy Andy Brush, who's a great saxophonist in the UK. Andy came out to a show when we were in London and invited me to try some horns. And I was really skeptical because I don't like new horns, period. I mean, for the longest time, I figured, the Super BA that my dad gave me that he played when he was, young, um, if something ever happens to it, I'm just going to have to quit the business because I don't know what I'm going to do. And this horn really just kind of changed my whole mind about that. So the mouthpiece. But this is really funny. This is not the tenor I normally play. This is my backup, and um, this is actually the first time I'm playing it in front of anybody. Um,
Wow.
but I just decided to experiment with it because this new mouthpiece that I'm playing is an SK, um, and it is the DM Origin, which is the Dave Mann Origin, which is really hilarious because Dave is a really good friend of mine, and we've been making music together for like 20 years. And when we worked together on my last record, he brought this mouthpiece and said, "Hey man, give this a try." And I was like, "Oh my God, this is an amazing mouthpiece. Thank you very much." He's like, "No, that's mine. You can't have it." And I'm like, "Well, why did you do that to me?" He's like, "But you can get one. I'll hook you up." So he hooked me up with Ron, I've had this mouthpiece for a year, and I've always been afraid to kind of really commit to it. In the last several months, I've just since I'm not on the road, I was just like, you know what, I'm going to give this mouthpiece a real serious try, and I just fell in love with it. It's awesome. I love it. So it's an SK uh, Origin,
Nice,
and I'm playing
nice.
Fred Hemke, my old teacher. Um, who passed away recently, but his legacy lives on through lots of things, including his reads, which are awesome.
Mm.
So yeah, that's what's going on right about now, and I'm using this fancy Silverstein. Is that what it is? You play
Mm.
these ligatures,
Yeah,
right?
Silverstein. Yeah.
But I don't have the fancy like cryo frozen stuff. That I
Yeah.
don't. I don't
Yeah.
have access to the awesome crazy stuff. That you do. But so I have I just have the regular flat one.
Mm. Yeah. I think that was the original T model. They just changed the name again. Can't even remember it off my head. I should know these by heart, but yeah. So that's awesome. And nice that you mentioned Fred Hemke as well, because Adrian had a good question that he sent to me yesterday, about that. So yeah, but it's great. Like I love my Trevor James horns as well. And of course you sound amazing as usual, and to most people it will be almost the same. Of course we as saxophonists we feel the difference. I mean, between this, Trevor James Raw and a SBA. I've had several SBAs. They're different. And I don't think
Yep.
any brand or Trevor James, they're not trying to tell people that this is better than SBA, but it has its own vibe, and it's been developed, with a lot of consultation from great players like Andy Snitzer, and Andy Brush also helped to, give a lot of feedback, and a lot of these players were vintage Selmer players. So
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
some things done to the horn to please people who are coming from a vintage Selmer, but in no way they set out to say, hey, I'm gonna make a new Mark 6 or SBA. I think once anyone touches and feels them, they know it's different, but just a great, great, great modern horn. And I guess nothing could, unless it's really good, you wouldn't want to not play your dad's old horn. It just wouldn't make
Right.
sense for you to, even if it was for money, which we know that's not the case. It has no reason to do that.
Wait,
And
people get paid to play the saxophone?
yeah, I think some people do get paid money to endorse certain
No, I mean
products.
like to play the saxophone. Like people like pay to hear the saxophone being played. Is that a thing?
Maybe not
I
anymore after this period, but they since it's online, right? Might as well I just go to Spotify and or just do live streams. So that's really funny. Yeah, but it's a
oh,
crazy world right now. But yeah, and I think what's amazing, and we didn't plan for you to play a different mouthpiece or even a different horn. This is not even the same TJ. We didn't script this, but I think anyone who knows your music, like Adil, if you have been following Steve for so many years, I think you close your eyes, you wouldn't even tell a difference, compared to, your SBA sound and with your other mouthpiece. And yeah, I think that just proves also, that sound, and we spoke about this, is really from within us. We, of course, the gear helps to bring that sound out. It's like a microphone, but it still has to come from within. And I'm glad you felt like using this new setup today, to test it out. And but yeah, I think
yeah.
that hopefully, for people who are watching, who are trying to find a vintage SBA and find a vintage Guadala, that maybe this is the way to go. And maybe I'll quickly jump in, like Steve, I understand that the horn was your dad's, but aside from that, were you always interested in like trying new things? Like, would you give it a try when people say, hey, over the years, 30 years, to try this and try that, or you would just stick to the old one?
I man, for a while when I first started kind of playing and getting a little bit known, I for the first time had access to instruments. People would ask me to maybe check out their horn and maybe endorse it, and I was like, wow, that this could be cool. I mean, uh, I've never had people give me saxophones before. This is awesome, and I really quickly um, realized how good I already had it. Having a 35,000 series super balanced action that was in the family, and um, I didn't have to buy it, which was great because if you want to buy one of these things now, it's going to
Yeah.
cost you a body part. Um, and uh, and so I became really, really just kind of anti trying everything. Um, I
Mm.
stuck to the same mouthpiece, the same reed, the same ligature, the same horn. I would even freak out when I would take my horn in to get repaired, and Paul Maslin, who has worked on my horn for years, would put a new pad on, and I was like, oh man, this is going to change everything. I mean, I was getting really kind of nuts about it, so I really wanted everything to stay the same. And so it's really out of character for me to make such a fundamental shift. Changing horns was really huge, and then changing mouthpieces, that was something that if you would have asked me, a year ago, I'd have been like, "You out of your mind?" I'm gonna play this mouthpiece until it turns to dust, and then I'm gonna, find another job. Um, but sometimes you just, you happen upon things and you check them out, and they help you. And so this helped me. I think that sound is in you. It's your point of view, and you're going to get that sound out of whatever they put in front of you. If you really want to sound a certain way, and you really have it in your head, and you're really, really, really committed to it, and it's really kind of just ingrained, you're going to figure out how to get that sound out of anything, any saxophone, any mouthpiece, any. You might have to work a lot harder to get it with certain gear, and then throughout the process, the whole point is to figure out how you can sound more like you intend to sound, because every setup is going to have its benefits and its limitations. Even my super balanced had some things about it that I kind of was like, I kind of learned to deal with, and I played the Trevor James, and it gave me just a little bit more body, a little bit less resistance, and but I'm not looking for it. I just happened to get lucky, and the other thing is, like, I took recommendations from people that I trust. I wouldn't have tried this horn if it wasn't for Andy Snitzer, who I respect immensely. If he wasn't on this horn, I would not even considered it. But he was saying, he said, "Steve, check it out. It's the real deal." And I certainly wouldn't have tried this mouthpiece if David Mann, who again, like another person I trust, without question, was like, "No, I think, after working with you for 20 years and hearing your saxophone and recording your saxophone for 20 years, I think this mouthpiece might be something that you'd be interested in." So it's about being open to change, but also, being open to change that's introduced to you by people that you know and trust and who know you really well.
You know what's funny?
The random thing about, like, hey, this mouthpiece is cool. It's green. I want one. Which I'm totally that guy. Don't get me wrong. You could drive yourself crazy, and that's a problem, because if you're always trying new things, you're never settled. There are some people who are great at it. Like, for a while, Jeff Kashua and I were, we played together all the time, and he's one of my favorite saxophone players on the planet. And literally every gig, Jeff would show up with something new, new reed, new ligature, new mouthpiece, new horn. I'd be like, "How do you do it?" But it goes back to my earlier point. He sounded awesome no matter what, because the sound that he wanted was in him and all that other gear. But for me, if I change things too much, it's just like I can't get settled, and I always feel like I'm, a little bit off kilter. So.
Yeah. Steve, I hope you are not making fun of me, because I have many, many green mouthpieces over here. And actually in some of my shows, and I'm one of those guys who I don't really believe gear matters, but when it's green, you got to try it, so yeah.
First of all, I had absolutely no idea that they made green mouthpieces. I was really making that up, and this is hilarious. But by virtue of that, of course, if it's green, you have to try it. If it's green, it's got to be good. You've got to check out a green mouthpiece.
Yeah.
That's just a no-brainer. Green.
Yeah, so funny, because those are actually 3D printed from a brand called Sios in France. And yeah, I've been doing, like, probably 25 live episodes, and yeah, if people go back and see, they'll see me playing a lot of different gear, throughout the episode. So it doesn't help that, I have a saxophone shop, so every new cool thing, I want to bring it for a test drive. But, that said, in the end, I think even all my students and people who listen to my music, they will say the same thing. I still sound the same. Even if it's a metal, it's a 3D printed or whatever, so it's all fun, and talking about your SBA, Adrian had a question. Let me pull this up quickly. Adrian's question was, "Hi Steve, I understand that your SBA is a 35,000 serial number. That should be the earlier short bell version. Did you have any issues with the bell notes always being sharp?"
The bell not being what?
The bell being shorter, so the notes in the bell always being sharp.
Not that I'm aware, and probably that has something to do with the fact that I started playing it so young that that's just what I was used to.
Mm.
The funny thing is, when I started playing this new horn, I had all kinds of problems with intonation because I got so used to adjusting to whatever madness was going on in my Selmer. Because the thing was hand built,
Yeah.
hand hammered, and it was, there was a lot of personality in it. So um, each of those saxophones was so different, and they had their little quirks. But since it was a saxophone that I'd been playing from such a young age all the way forward, I just got used to it. And when I got on a horn that was a lot more evenly voiced,
Yeah.
I had trouble playing it in tune. So it's the new stuff that I was struggling with, not the old stuff.
Yeah, that's so funny, and maybe I could speak a bit of that because I had a 35,000 serial SBA, a silver plated one, and
Oh wow!
I did experience having tuning issues on the bottom notes, and even when I was trying to, so I got it for a really good price. If I'm not wrong, like 6,000 US dollars, which is just
Oh wow! That's
quite
really good price.
yeah, original silver, played great, and yeah, but I realized like the low, C sharp B, area was a bit sharp, but to me, I was perfectly fine with it, I'm not holding those notes for like 10 bars as well, at a time, so I'll just brush past it and then adjust accordingly. So I didn't find it a big problem, but I foolishly also sold it for about that price, which if I held on any longer, it would have been really nice. But yeah, and it's nice to hear that yeah, you just worked with it, being having played that horn for since young. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. I think Adrian plays a SBA around that serial number now as well. So yeah, I guess yeah, Adrian, if you get used to it, I think it should be okay after a while. And yeah, Adrian has been sending really, really good questions. And I've a lot of people, sometimes in the chat and comments they send questions, but I guess I have to moderate them to some extent or so. But Adrian's questions are always spot on, and a lot of times things I want to ask already, so it's amazing. And so Adrian, there's another good question which you brought up about Fred Hemke. He said you studied with the great Fred Hemke. What was your greatest takeaway from your lessons with him?
Well, that God, there's so much. Um, I think the thing that I took away from from studying with Fred was um, really focusing on artistry and making the music your own. Because I was studying, classical music with him, contemporary classical music, for saxophone, and we were able for the first time, and I was able for the first time um, to get beyond just learning the music and trying to play it technically correct. Um, we spoke mostly about performing the music and interpreting the music and making it your own, and talking about the fact that a piece of music is an invitation by the composer to you, the performer, to kind of honor them, but also to create a one of a kind version of that piece through your performance. He also really started to get me to think more about performance and the fact that there are people listening to you. Because so much of the time when we're practicing, we're focusing on ourselves. We're focusing on getting the technique correct. We're focusing on sound. We're talking, focused on precision. And we forget that when we perform, that there are going to be people there, and we need to give them a really a good experience as well. So interpreting, making it your own, but also performing and being an artist, and realizing that there's another part of the equation, and that's the audience. And whatever we do, we have to keep them in mind, because in the end, that's why we're here, and that's what keeps us here.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's something really interesting, And did you study classical for a long time?
Yeah, that was my thing for all of my formal training is in
Wow.
yeah, in kind of classical saxophone. Like
Mm.
all of the study that I've really the formal study that I've done with teachers and with pedagogy. Everything that I learned about jazz and popular styles, whatever blues, was really just kind of listening to records, playing along with other saxophone players,
Mm.
transcribing everything I could,
Mm.
and then being really lucky and growing up in a city where there was so many great mentors that just took me under their wing and schooled me and taught me
Mm.
so much about everything, about the music, about improvisation, about connecting with audiences, about not
Mm.
settling for stuff that I know and striving to thing that I'm,
Mm.
maybe don't know that I know yet.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, classical, but that was a great way to develop the technique and the work ethic and the concept of sound. And I even today, if I, with students, I make them play the classical repertoire
Mm.
and the same methodology that I use to develop my sound and my technique and
Mm.
point of view. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. I think that leads very nicely to the next question. And Adrian says, you are known to have a very recognizable, robust, beefy tone on tenor. Was there anyone who inspired you to have this kind of sound on tenor, or was it largely self developed?
Huh. That's a good question. I think that I probably gravitated towards listening to um, tenor saxophones with big sounds.
Mm.
Johnny Griffin, was a Billy Pierce, Michael Brecker, Bob Mincer.
Mm.
Um, uh, uh, I just kind of that rich, robust, deep tenor sound was something that I always just really, really enjoyed.
Mm.
And so, and my dad was a tenor player as well. And my
Mm.
dad played check this out for saxophone players out there. This will blow your mind. He played an Otto Link double ring Factory 9 mouthpiece.
Wow.
So I mean, literally, you could drive a truck through the space between the tip of the mouthpiece and the reed.
Yeah.
And he played a 1.5 Rico reed on that
Wow.
thing. But the sound was gargantuan, you know. And so, kind of listening to that and that being my exemplar, my dad got a huge sound out of that balance with that mouthpiece. So that's kind of, if I really think about it, I think it started with my dad, and then I just kind of sought out other players that had that rich kind of deep sound.
Nice. That's a really really interesting reed and mouthpiece combination. Factory size 9 is almost unheard of. I guess when they were making those, probably size 5, 6. Even 7 would be an original 7 would be hard to come by. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. Did he pass you that mouthpiece as well with the horn?
Yeah. Yeah. He did.
Wow, nice. It'll be cool to hear you on that mouthpiece one day, you know. That would
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Yeah, and I think another question that I thought of asking you was um with all those influences starting from classical and then through jazz and contemporary jazz, what made you, or how did you come to the conclusion that contemporary jazz was the most you, when you write and you release an album under the name Steve Cole, that it will be that music and not classical, or not straight ahead jazz? How did that happen for you?
Well, I kind of stopped playing classical for the wrong reason, honestly. I couldn't figure out how I was gonna, get a job, and so because I was looking, it's like, what do people, do with classical saxophone backgrounds? And I didn't realize, because at the time I didn't think I wanted a, university job, which is really kind of ironic because I have a university job. Uh, so.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I don't want to teach at a university, what am I going to do? And so I took a little detour from music and ended up, getting a whole other kind of thing with business. But even when I was playing classical music, because I was raised listening to jazz, it was always kind of in my blood, and I always really, loved it. But I also like pop music, and I like soul music and blues, and I listened to all kinds of music. And then I discovered, that people were putting all this together in a really cool way, and I started listening to Grover Washington Jr. and
Mm.
that whole, and then that was like, oh, okay, all right, this feels like home to me,
Mm.
um, and so David Sanborn and just on and on and on. I just that was just like, okay, this is really cool. This is everything that I like all at the same time, you know.
Mm.
Uh, and so I really kind of, you know, that and R&B at the time, that was it for me. So
Mm.
I knew where I kind of naturally was living. So that's how I kind of
Mm.
got there.
Nice. That's really cool. And we're definitely gonna jump into a bit about, you teaching in university and the music business aspects. I'm gonna jump in back into the chat. We had some comments as well as questions. Xavier says, the great Steve Cole, hope to see you back here in South Florida soon enough. Your last show down here with Ollie Silk was incredible. So
Oh,
amazing.
that was
Yeah.
a blast. Yeah, that was a great time.
Yeah, cool. So we have Xavier from South Florida. And Adil was saying, live and recorded, no difference, which is a huge, huge compliment actually. And that was the first thing that jumped out when I heard. So I know Steve sounds good, great live and recorded. But if Steve can sound good through Zoom, that's like Steve, I don't know how you do it, but there's nothing that can get in your way. It blew my mind. Like, seriously, when we had the call earlier this week, I was like, I was shaking my head the whole time. I hope you didn't think I was rude or anything. I was like, how is this possible? So Steve, we definitely need another session, maybe to dive more into recording techniques or just hooking up a great system, because I think this medium of communication is going to be here to stay for at least a
Yeah,
while more. So
sure.
man, it's like you nailed every single part. So yes, Steve sounds amazing even through Zoom, which is just is incredible. Steve, you should include that in your new bio, so people really know how amazing your music is. But
I'll record the entire album into Zoom and just release.
yeah,
Just hit record. You know.
yeah, they might sponsor the album, to prove to people that it's possible to sound good. So man, that's amazing. And Adil was saying also it was his first time watching you, and I guess live, playing, and which is amazing. Adil is based in Singapore, and to get to, he's been following you and to hear you, play like, literally 10 centimeters away from the screen, that's pretty cool. So, that's why I love to do this and really connect our two worlds, in that sense.
Yeah,
So that's
yeah.
amazing. Well, my dad is here as well. He says amazing. Wendy says awesome. My wife says what a great tune, and Adrian says that's how a tenor saxophone should sound. And man, I really, really agree. I think from day one, what drew me in was just a huge, rich, warm tone. And I know a lot of people would have told you before that they wouldn't believe that you play like the brightest model of Guadala. Have you gotten that comment a lot, like, about your sound?
Yeah, the Gardala Super King, which is what I was playing, is a super bright mouthpiece, and it can get away from you definitely, because it is the like the brightest mouthpiece on the planet. Well, not on the planet, but of all of those kind of that range. And so yeah, there was something I just absolutely loved about it, though, how it felt, and I knew that I could kind of tame it with the right kind of attitude and the right reed combination. Um, that mouthpiece was really really bad on reeds, though. I mean, it's not like it wore them out, but it was super picky. So finding a reed for that
Mm.
mouthpiece that would be satisfying, that would feel good and sound good, it was horrific. You know, I would go through, I don't know, 20 or 25 reads and maybe not even find one.
Wow.
And that's not saying anything about the reads. It's really just there's a very very narrow bandwidth of the right reed for that mouthpiece. It's super super picky, and that's one
Mm.
of the things that I really was frustrated. And I lived like that for for like I think I played that mouthpiece for 15 years. So, you know, this mouthpiece, the thing I really like about it is it definitely more reeds work on it. And
Mm.
I'm hoping that that's a real thing. I'm hoping that's not just
Mm.
my head. I hope that's real. But I went through like 10 reads, the other day, and I probably have five of them that I could totally do a gig on. So that's you know going from 1 in 25 to 5 out of 10, to 50% is
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah, that's cool. I know nothing beats a really good cane reed, but currently I'm in the phase where I'm just using the Leger synthetic reeds, and just
Yeah.
pluck it on and it works. When things get busy, I don't have time to go and sort out all these reeds. That definitely helps. And yeah, I have a Super King. Is yours the handmade vintage ones? Your Super King?
No, mine are the laser cut ones
Hmm.
that I think he licensed. I forget who was manufacturing them, but he licensed them to some CNC machine. And
Hmm.
yeah, so it's not like the hand built like super crazy great Gardala mouthpiece. It's the mass produced one.
Wow.
But yeah, and
Cool.
yeah,
And even those are not hard to. Those are really hard to get nowadays. Even I think Woodwind Brasswind was selling them or got the license to sell these laser trimmed on. I actually have one here. The silver plated Super King. I love it.
yeah.
It's brighter than the Michael Brecker that I use. But I've always wanted to get one. Thanks to your sound, and yeah, it's really nice. But I think now you made the price of this go way up. Now that people know you played that. So if you guys want one, you can name your price and I'll consider selling one to you. Oops, sorry.
It disappeared.
Give me a minute. Okay, sorry. I was putting down the mouthpiece and I accidentally clicked fade to black. So yeah. Um, but yeah, it's really cool to know about your approach, the reeds and mouthpieces, and yeah, that was really cool. And knowing that when the sound is when the sound is from within, I think whether live recorded or through, a video streaming platform, it definitely wouldn't deviate too much. So I think Steve is a perfect example of that. And we have a question here from Edomas. He says, any thoughts on Michael Brecker and other saxophone heroes? Or maybe I can rephrase that, do you enjoy Michael Brecker's music and any other like similar, jazz heroes from that era?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, Michael Breck was like required listening. You know, there's so much going on there. His sound was just outrageously amazing and beautiful, and uh, there's so much breadth to it. I mean, whether he's playing pop music, playing jazz, playing fusion, playing what his original stuff, it's just marvelous. And then of course his technique and his command of harmony. So listening to Michael Brecker, and I think this, what a lot of people would say, it's both, an education and inspiration, but also a source of incredible frustration because, you know, it was like, oh my God, I'm listening to, you know, something that I'll never, even approach. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
but that's great. I mean, there needs to be those cats out there who are just otherworldly because it keeps the rest of us inspired and
Mm.
and striving for something and feeling that fire of
Mm.
just when I thought I had it together, I realized that I'm not even at the starting line. You know what I mean? Which is so important. And I think that and I even there are players that I listen to that that aren't Michael Brecker that make me feel that way. I listen to
Mm.
Jeff Kashua sometimes, and I'm standing right next to him on stage, and I'm just like, oh man, did you really have to play that well just then? right before I'm gonna play, you know. Uh, um, but yeah, I mean, there, Brecker and all of that kind of, lineage. I also was a big, always been a big fan of Kirk Whalum. I just, think his expressiveness, his
Oh
attitude,
yeah.
his authenticity, his sound, the choices that he makes in terms of the music that he plays, it's just great and super inspiring.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I can, go on and on. There's so many. Cannonball Adderley just absolutely blows me away and makes
Mm.
my head spin when I hear him play. I was always a huge fan of Richie Cole,
Mm.
who recently passed
Mm.
away,
Yeah.
and had all of those great records he made on the Palo Alto label, years ago. Just an exciting player with a lot of
Mm.
energy, and so yeah, man, just
Mm.
great saxophone players. Um, I have to decide how I'm going to listen to them because I can listen to Coltrane from a perspective of I just want to enjoy the genius of this.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about being a musician right now.
Yeah.
I just want to think about just being someone who has access to this genius
Mm.
uh, through his records, and I want
Mm.
to just enjoy them.
Mm.
And then sometimes I'll listen to them as a student,
Mm.
and I'll try to figure out what the heck is going
Mm.
on. Um, and, and so I think that with everyone that I listen to, I have to kind of decide how I'm going to listen to them. Am I going to
Mm.
listen as a fan and as someone who wants to just enjoy and be in
Mm.
the music, or am I going to listen critically to try to learn and also to try to be inspired? You know,
Mm. Mm.
a lot of times it can happen simultaneously, or that kind of goes. But sometimes I have to be really conscious about how I'm listening,
Mm. Mm. Yeah,
or else I wouldn't be able to. You know.
yeah, yeah. I was just gonna ask you that, like, how much of each do you do? Is it like half the time you listen and approach it as a student of the craft, and then the other half, or now as in this current day and age, do you listen to music more, on the learning, wanting to gain something musically, or just as a fan of music? Where do you gravitate towards more these days?
Well, the thing that's interesting is that I probably have more time to be a student these days.
Mm.
So I find myself listening just circumstantially much more critically because I'm actually having more time to to kind of dig in and try
Mm.
to figure out like,
Mm.
okay, you know what can I work on today?
Mm.
And also when I feel like when I'm uh, and this is going to sound a little bit disjointed, but um, or contradictory, but under normal circumstances, when I'm in the midst of making a record, I listen way less critically to other players and to music in general because I'm
Mm.
trying to be inspired by just sounds and ideas and choices, compositional
Mm.
techniques. So I'm listening from a very, very different perspective because I
Mm.
don't want to get into the minutia of it. I'm really trying to just kind of get into a headspace of creativity, and I'm listening at that level. Um, when I feel like I'm a student and I have, and a lot of it frankly is if I crash and burn on something, it's just like, oh, we pulled out this tune, and I realized how much I need to practice. I'll get into that self-loathing mode and be like, all right, I gotta start unpacking everything and relearning and committing to just figuring out new stuff
Mm.
because I'm frustrated.
Mm.
So it really depends on kind of what's happening in my professional life,
Mm.
usually, and that really kind of dictates the kind of listener I am.
Mm. That's cool. That's really really interesting to know. And yeah, just jumping back into another question. We have Brendan Ryan from the U.S. He says he wants to ask Steve, do you have an effects processor that you prefer for your live sound?
Okay, so that's a really good question because there's a lot of schools of thought. And, I used to be the guy who showed up with like way more reverbs, compressors, delays, preamps than I did, luggage. Um, and because I always wanted to have this uh, my sound wherever I went.
Mm.
And what I realized was after a while, um, that was a real pain. And what I was really trying to achieve, I never really achieved because every time you get into a new venue and every time you get into a new sound system, even if you're carrying the same engineer with you, it's never the same.
Mm.
And so I actually went the opposite direction, like the pendulum swung the complete other way. And I use in my monitors zero effects. I let the front of house engineer, put reverb and delay and do all the good stuff that we love to hear on the saxophone. Um, Real just simple kind of effects package of a nice warm hall that's not too overwhelming and a
Mm.
little bit of delay that also has some reverb on the delays. That's an important thing. Um, but on stage, I listen to myself completely unaffected and dry. And
Wow.
the whole concept of that for me is if I can be satisfied with my sound, listening to it in its most just unadulterated form of being just dry, unaffected, if I can make that sound good, then it's gotta sound good, you know, in the audience with all the good stuff on
Yeah.
it.
Wow. Wow. That's pretty mind blowing, you know. I thought you would say at least, have the same effect sent in your monitors, and wow, that's really, really incredible and something for all of us to think about. Are we so used to our sound being aided by the effects, or do we sound good, just with the core sound? And I was just talking about this to a student lately, and I said, actually, I think the benefit I gained was because I treated my room. So I have about 10 acoustic panels that makes my room really, really dry and dead. And this is where I practice. I don't have the luxury of having a huge house with a nice natural reverb, and or I don't practice a lot with headphones and through my recording chain. I know some people
Yeah.
do. They record, they practice with their recording gear, to hear the effects and everything. So, but yeah, I was just thinking, actually, maybe that helped me in a sense, to get used to playing totally dry. It doesn't sound amazing at the start, but and now to tie in back to what you've been doing, and to be so happy with that raw dry sound, and if that sounds good, once you add that magical touch of some reverb and delay, it's definitely gonna sound good. So, wow, I didn't expect that at all. Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
really.
it, it's interesting because and you know what the thing is, if you get your sound sounding the way you want it to through the monitors dry, and I do spend a lot of time with the monitor engineer just tweaking a couple of frequencies in
Mm,
EQ and making sure that the monitors are representing the saxophone correctly, because a lot of times monitor engineers will set up an EQ for monitors
mm,
based on you know the last vocalist that they did that sounded great, and they'll throw that EQ up, and it's not appropriate for the saxophone.
yeah.
So I always make sure that I tell everybody just take all of the EQ out, just make it flat, and let's see what it sounds like
Yeah.
first, right? And then from there, I can say okay. And most of the time, the three frequencies that I always have to mess with are on the low end about 250 hertz, on the high end 2.5 kilohertz, and and a lot of time we have to just reduce a lot of 800 just to get that kind of nasally kind of midi quality out of the monitors.
Mm,
So I usually end up cutting a little bit of 800, adding a tiny bit of 250, adding maybe a little bit of 2.5, and that usually gets me into a good space. And if that sounds good, then great. And sometimes it's really challenging. Sometimes just
mm,
monitors don't want you to get there. You know. But if you're have effects on top of that, and you think that and then you're messing with your own EQ, and
yeah. Yeah.
it just got into a big mess. So I just was like, man, if I can get that pure tone happening, I'm good.
Mm, That's amazing. Yeah, that's quite similar to I guess how I've been approaching shows. You know, when I first started, same thing. I'll bring all my gear, all the effects as well. And I've been toying with this for a while, but nowadays I'm just like I still like to bring my own mic. So I actually have both my wired and non-wired versions, and I'll just say, okay, this is my mic, give me phantom power, everything EQ flat and just a bit of reverb. And I just don't want them to mess around with anything. So nowadays I just like right from the start, I just tell them just please, start everything off flat. And usually I don't even tweak anything after that. I just, get used to that because I know the mic is that's the most accurate. I use a Audio Technica 350 clip-on mic, just one of the best that works for me and relatively
Yeah.
inexpensive. So yeah, but so cool to hear you, going down that approach as well, because I know there are many other, very established saxophonists that will bring like a whole flight case, worth of gear, So I'm glad, that there are people like yourself, who just work with, getting a great original sound. And it's so great that a lot about the technical details as well, in terms of frequencies and all. I think, maybe many musicians, they don't take ownership of that part. So when the saxophone doesn't sound great, they don't know what to tell the engineer. And I was like that, until at least recently, when I started to get into it a bit more, to at least let them know which frequencies to cut or add. Was this something you knew was a big priority, or have you been doing this for a long time, like being very specific with your EQ and tech requirements?
Yeah. To me, sound is the most important thing. It's like, why does anybody want to listen to you if you're not playing with a great sound? It's always been my teacher in high school. That was the thing that he really instilled in me. Sound is everything.
Mm.
And so you work on something for a really long time, and then you get to a venue, uh, and someone with a knob just like took the last 20 years of work and just turned you into an AM radio.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it's really important, and so just conceptually, I wanted to make sure that I got the sound that I worked on. You know,
Mm.
and I was really lucky when I started recording. I was working with an engineer named Craig Bauer, and he owned the studio that I made most of my early records in, and he was the mix engineer and the tracking engineer. And he was one of the most musical human beings I've ever met, and a brilliant musician, a brilliant
Mm.
engineer. And he really got to know my saxophone sound because we made a lot of records together, and
Mm.
he and I spent many hours. Him in the control room and me in the live room, me playing at him through a microphone, um, and he started kind of describing to me, when we would go back in the room in the control room together. I said, "Well, what did you do? Because it sounds a lot better." And he said, "Well, a lot of it's mic placement, so making sure that you're on axis very uh, correctly, given the saxophone and where you want to sound, how you want to sound." But then also he started telling me all the frequencies that he was messing with, and I started to hear what they did, and started really learning, what these different frequencies sounded like and what they did to the saxophone.
Mm.
And so, what I would recommend for anyone is, play your saxophone, get your Logic, rig up, and
Mm.
get a parametric EQ, and just start messing around with frequencies and learn what they sound like. Crank up, 4K, crank up 8K, crank up 2.5, crank up and down, 800, whatever. So what that sounds like, and start trying to get your sound, and every situation is going to be different, but if you can kind of hear when you listen to your saxophone what's missing or what there's too much of, and you can start to adjust it to get where you want to go by using the language that engineers
Mm.
understand,
Mm.
uh, then you're gonna be able to at least have some consistency about how you sound from place to place, and you're gonna be a lot happier playing because you're not gonna be at the mercy of someone who has really good intentions, but doesn't know you and doesn't know your sound and doesn't know what you're trying to
Mm,
get to.
mm. Wow, I think that's really, really good reminder for everyone. I think, I mean, not like you said, really nothing more important than that tone. And that's what we practice all these years for. And you're right, just having horrible experiences with certain sound engineers at the show, and just pissing off the whole band, and then we can't play well, man. Yeah, so yeah, I think we had some, my band, my wife and I, my wife is a vocalist as well, so she really started getting serious about this as well. And some engineers even are shocked that she knows her stuff, because if it's not sounding right, she's telling them, to do the respective tweaks, to the sound. So I
Yeah.
think, yeah, if more of us take ownership of that, in the end, we just want a great performance. If it affects us, we don't like the sound in the monitors. We've explored, of course, all the in-ear monitors, even bringing our own monitors, because sometimes we just can't deal, or they say, oh, it's a 5-piece band, we have one monitor for the whole band, and we'll be like, just ridiculous situation. So nowadays we tend to go over prepared. We actually keep an extra monitor in our car for some of the shows, because if it pisses us off, ours, we can, it's a TC Helicon, she can just hang it on, clip it on her mic stand. So if the mix is horrible, she just makes sure she goes through that and has a great mix for herself. So it's something that is so important. And yeah, hopefully those of you who are watching, and not even just saxophonists, but as long as you're a musician, I think it'll be a good, especially if you are more free now this period, to really dig into some of this EQ and effects, and getting your sound really, really dialed in. So thank you so much, Steve, for sharing that. And yeah, it's really appreciated. And since we're talking about all that, would you like to play another song for us?
Yeah. Sure. Let me.
Awesome.
Let's see. We'll do another song from my current record. This is a
Okay.
song I wrote again with David Mann, um, and it's called Neo Soul.
Mm.
I think that's going to be a good one.
Yeah. Awesome. Nice. Thank you so much, Steve. That was pretty cool, huh? I mean, you don't get to do a nice fade out in your shows, right? So this gotta be,
I know.
this is definitely something different experience. Yeah, so
And
funny.
it's always funny playing along with tracks. It's like, oh yeah, there's a fade. I think on this new record I'm not gonna have any fades. I'm gonna have endings for
Mm.
every song so they don't sound funny when I play them.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you so much. I've been, with your music, I don't know what is it about it, but I always feel like picking up my tenor and just playing along, So I've been doing that the past few days as well. That's something I
Oh, that's
love, but I should really just also sit down and really enjoy it as a just purely as a consumer. But man, it's just as a tenor player, I just love to play along, and get inspired by the sound and music. So I'm really loving all your music. So thank you so much. So great to hear that, live, as live as it can get now, but
man.
yeah.
I appreciate that.
No
I'm the
problem.
same way. I just play along with saxophone players that I like.
Mm.
It's great. You learn all kinds of stuff. I still do that. Just you never kind of outgrow that.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, it's so funny because I was just working with a student on like Sunny Stit yesterday, some of the transcriptions, and it's just so cool, that, everyone has their own thing going on. And, for sure, I don't think there's anyone else who or you don't sound like one particular person. You sound like all your influences probably, all gathered and into one, and there's just one singular you, which is just so amazing. And it's really difficult, really difficult to achieve that. And not many people, if they just hear it on the radio and immediately they know it's you. But I think, for you, it's really easy. Do you feel like it was something you had to work hard to create, or it was just there already and you're just trying to keep it there?
Well, I think everyone starts outstanding on someone else's shoulders. I mean, and hearing players that you really like and saying, yeah, I want to sound like that. Um, and that is exactly how to do it. That's how you get your thing together. You find players that whose sound you like and whose style you like, and just copy the crap out of it, because by trying to do that, you're training your ear to, and that's translating into what you're needing to do with your air and with your embouchure and with your reed choices and all these little nuances and how you move your fingers. Because a lot of it's nuance in terms of how you're actually navigating the saxophone to create
Mm.
and emulate the kinds of things that you're hearing players do that are inspiring you. And so you're training your ear, and you're training the rest of your body
Mm.
to get to the sound you're trying to get to. And of course, when you're in your formative stages, it's not going to be all you. It's going to be a bunch of people that inspire you. But after you've heard a bunch of people, and after you've played a lot like other people, you're going to find that thing in you that's unique, and to your point of view, it's like your version of all of this, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And because you've worked so hard on trying to play like other people, and you've trained yourself to make those moves that you need to make with all these different variables to get to the sound that you want, when you start to develop the sound that you want, that's your unique sound, you're going to have developed that ability to get there and to manifest that. The stark reality of me kind of realizing that I had to get to something that was less derivative was when I was making my first record.
Mm.
And I did several tunes, final saxophone tracks on my first album, which was on Atlantic Records. It was a really uh, anxious time for me, and I thought that I had gotten some really great final saxophone tracks.
Mm.
And I remember going back into the control room and listening, and and thinking to myself, that sounds like a really good imitation of a saxophone player that already has a record deal and has already been recording, and people know, you know. And I realized that I got to go back and I got to do this all again.
Wow.
And I got to figure out what my voice is, because I can't go and put out a record that sounds like I'm imitating somebody else, even though those players, whoever they, were so important in my, growth and my figuring out what I wanted to sound like. But then I realized it's like, okay, it's time to leave the nest. You've got to put your own interpretation on your music, because your name is on this record, not theirs.
Yeah.
And that was a really big wake up call, and it took a minute, but sometimes it hits you in the face like that hard that you're listening back and you're about to put a record out and you're going to put your name on it, and it's going to sound like somebody else, and that you can't let that stand. You can't go down that way. So for me, that was a real big it took me a long time to just, it doesn't happen overnight, but the realization that you better start developing your own approach that's yours. You're not doing an imitation of someone else, putting your name on it. That's not the way you're supposed to do it.
Steve, if you don't mind me asking, when you were listening back to that music, those few songs off the first record, what was the name of the saxophonist that jumped out at you, that you're like, oh man, this sounds too similar to this person? Was there one particular name?
Yeah, Kirk Whalum.
Wow. Wow. That's really, really interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Did you spend a lot of...
I was doing all kind of Kirk Whalum-isms. I
Wow.
still probably rip off a bunch of stuff from a bunch of guys. I mean, uh, it's just,
Wow.
we all kind of put our own little flavor. We get inspired. We hear cool little licks and cool ways of approaching things. But being influenced and standing on the shoulders of someone and kind of mixing them into your own kind of version of what you're doing is one thing. You can hear any player who really has their own sound, and still you could probably check out if you're listening carefully, it's like, oh yeah, I'll bet that cat listened to a lot of Cannonball, or I'll bet she listened to a lot of Maceo Parker. You know what I mean? So you can do that, but it doesn't hit you over the head. You got to kind of listen, and that's great, because you can kind of try to do some ancestry of the sound and approach. You can think, oh, I hear a little of this, I hear a little bit of that. That's cool. That's different than this player sounds just like fill in the blank.
Yes.
That's to me, in my personal opinion, that's okay for a while, absolutely, but after a while,
Yeah.
it's time to figure out what you're going to do with all that.
Yeah.
And
That's...
put it into your own thing.
Wow, that's thank you so much for sharing that. I'm not sure if many people have asked you that question before, but yeah, that's so cool. And to think that now, if anyone, music lover, saxophonist, or just music lover listens to you and Kirk Whalum side by side, they will never think, that there is a strong relationship. You guys are, just totally different players. Of course, many of the core elements are there, in every great player. But yeah, it's so cool to think about it, that, when you made your first album, you had a lot of, Kirk's, sound in there. But now, you've developed, like, it's just you, that I wouldn't have thought, when I was listening to you mention that, I had a few names that pop up in my head. I wouldn't have thought it was Kirk Whalum.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's...
you never got to hear those tracks, because I redid
Yeah,
them.
yeah. So I was just...
But
Yeah.
no, I really enjoy his playing. I enjoy. There's so many saxophone players that
Yeah.
I get a lot of inspiration from, and I listen to over and over, because they're just inspiring.
Yeah.
And naturally you're gonna take some things, that like maybe I can kind of bake that into my little thing because I dig that a lot, um, but yeah, and there's we all do that, but there's
Mm.
also you gotta make it your own. You
Yeah.
can't, and my problem was in those first few takes that you'll never hear, because I burned them. Um, it was just like, oh my god, you know what? Because I wasn't taking responsibility for figuring it out for myself, so I was relying on somebody else's thing. I was playing just like, well, not just like, because the big difference between me and Kirk is Kirk's way better than me. Um, but,
That's not true,
but
but yeah.
I was just kind of being like, I was relying on channeling and or trying to emulate him,
Mm.
uh, to feel like what I was playing sounded good, and I had to get away from that and rely on myself and my own point of view.
Mm, that's really inspiring, actually. Could I ask you, when you had that realization after hearing those tracks, when you went back to your practice room, to your studio, what was the thought process like? How did you, physically try to get away from that?
Um, I think a lot of the personality in an approach to playing happens, frankly, with how you approach a note and how you depart from that note. Um, and I just kind of started thinking to myself, what are the nuances that I can integrate? How can I how and it's so subtle. It's hard to talk about because it's such sometimes it's just such minute detail. What kind of vibrato are you going to use? And how are you going to taper a note? And how are you going to use vibrato at the end of that note? How are you going to what kind of grace notes are you going to use between notes?
Mm.
Um, so much of what defines a person's signature sound is actually in a thousand tiny little details and tiny little choices, that they make. And I mean, so the good news is that there's an infinite kind of number of possibilities there because it is so minute and there are so many. But the unfortunate thing is, there are so many and there's so many choices. So I just tried to, when I caught myself using somebody else's choices, I simply just stopped and said, okay, that's how they would do it, and that sounds awesome. But what are some other options that maybe,
Mm. Mm.
I could do that would be more my choices?
Mm.
So it was very deliberate, and it was a pain, you know, because every note I'm just like, no, I'm not gonna. I mean, I would literally start a track and spend, this is, in the beginning as I was trying to figure this all out, I would
Mm.
spend like a half hour on the, how am I gonna play this first note? Am I gonna play a grace note into it? Am I gonna kind of try to, lip into it? Am I gonna use vibrato in it? Am I gonna, I mean, but I think that's where, the classical world helped me out because being able to make choices like that means that you have to be able to manipulate the saxophone in a very granular way. So you have to have practiced, you know, tapering notes and decrescendoing and using vibrato in all
Mm.
kinds of different ways
Mm.
and attacking notes with different nuances. And so if you have those tools at your disposal, it's a little easier to then bring them to bear when you're making, individual choices. So it's a complicated thing.
Mm.
So part of it is just having done your homework and having the facility to do it. Another part of it is having listened to enough music and understanding what other people are doing to be able to emulate them so you can kind of build that granularity and that point of view and manifest it.
Mm.
And then ultimately being able to take that a step further and trying to figure out what choices you want to make that are original to you,
Mm.
that still may be inspired by what you've heard and what you've learned and what you've listened to, but are not just flat out copies. They could be
Mm.
inspiration. They could
Mm.
be built upon or inspired by, but you don't want to go out there just kind of putting somebody else's choices out there as your own. You know what I'm saying?
Mm,
I mean,
mm.
that's the goal anyway. I mean, we
Yeah.
all listen. It's very hard not to feel hypocritical talking about this because as well intentioned as I am, I'm sure that I fall down on the job plenty of times. But the goal is always to be monitoring of just am I putting out something that is original? Am I putting out an original version of this saxophone playing? Uh, am I doing the work? Am I conscious of it? You know,
Mm,
that's
mm,
that's the best I can do.
mm. No, I think
Whether I'm successful or not is remains seen. It's a work in progress.
yeah, for sure. And I realize, what you're saying about, probably it might be good practice for me, to maybe record myself and listen back and see if there's any particular thing that it was just a pure copy from someone else, and then maybe assess, different options that I could approach, like, the grace notes and the vibrato and all. And that's something that I never thought of doing, to really consciously catch myself when I'm doing something that is, just imitating that one particular person. So yeah, that's something I think I'll definitely be doing for myself, in my own playing. And funny enough, it was also through my first album, that I had to struggle with this as well. So I was fortunate enough to work with Paul Brown. So I flew up to
Oh
LA.
yeah.
So I did my first album with him, which was amazing. And come to think of it, the one person that Paul Brown mentioned a lot in our recordings, which was very flattering, was Boney James. So Paul
Yeah.
kept saying like, "Oh, that sounded a bit like Boney," and yeah, it's been like 10 years since I heard someone approach the tenor like that. Reminds him a lot of Boney, and of course at that point I was really flattered. I'll be like, wow, he produced like first 10 albums of Boney or something like that. So, but then actually now if it gets me thinking, I need to go and check back on my playing, if it's, too much of it is if too much has been influenced by one particular person, it may not be a great thing, if I wanna have a strong sound of my own. So yeah, just something for me to think about after this as
Yeah, I
well.
think it's an evolution, man. I mean, it's a work in progress. You
Mm,
know, I try not to be too hard on myself, and I try not to go back to records and be like, oh man, I wish I would have done something different because there's always an
yeah,
opportunity,
yeah,
to do it different the next time.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you can get really obsessed with it, but I don't know. I, I, I think it's just something to keep in mind and just to catch yourself every once in
Mm,
a while.
mm,
Not to be because if you think about it too much, then you're just gonna you're not gonna play.
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah.
uh, knowing that this is a work in progress, it's always evolving. Your sound is always evolving. You
Mm,
listen to players, anyone earlier in their career, later in their career. There's a maturity. There's different
yeah.
experiences that influences what you do. I mean, everyone's
Mm.
changing and adapting.
Mm, yeah, it's true. I guess sometimes if we are too critical about ourselves, and then it's a slippery slope as well. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's super cool. And I'm gonna jump back into the comments. And oh, Nathan Allen, he's a saxophonist in the U.S. as well. He says he also loves playing along with your music, which is he says it's very inspiring. So that's amazing. Adil says he prefers you to Kirk Whalum, but there's no, everyone has their own. I mean, we all like different musicians. It's almost impossible to say, one person is better than another. There's just no comparison. So, but yeah, Adil, thanks for sharing that. Adrian says that first record was the one that made him hooked to your sound. Which is
Oh
amazing.
wow.
He says you were holding an alto in the CD cover, but the first track was
Yeah.
on tenor, blew his mind. Cool. Do you play alto much? Um, currently
You know,
still.
I play a lot of alto, just not in front of people. No. I actually practice, classical music on on alto saxophone primarily.
Wow.
I'm actually getting into it more. I really enjoy it, but my voice has always been on tenor, and I've always kind of specialized, on this horn. But I'm looking at my soprano over there and kind of feeling like that might make a guest appearance on this record, and I'm enjoying playing the alto. I've got to kind of get into some different mouthpieces for my alto.
Mm.
I'm playing a Beechler
Mm.
7 on that, and I like it. But after now playing tenor and playing this larger kind of
Mm.
almost link-sized mouthpiece, and going back to that Beechler feels a little bit like playing through a straw. So I'm gonna have to kind
Yeah.
of investigate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I just saw a notification pop up, and Jeff Kashiwa is here. And he says, Steve Cole is one of my favorite sax players on stage whenever we play together. So that's super cool. And I just replied him and I said, Jeff, Steve is saying the exact same thing about you. So that's pretty cool. And hi, Jeff, if you are there.
Yeah, Jeff is one of my most famous students.
That's
I used
pretty.
to joke.
That's
Yeah, I was talking about like not stealing every people things from other people, and I just stole Jeff's joke. Like, haha.
Yeah, I definitely need to reach out to Jeff to get him on the show as well. I absolutely love his playing and him as a person as well. So that would be really fun. And that reminded me, I saw a comment just now. I Let me check back who asked it. I think it was Xavier from Florida, right? He says, Daniel, thank you for these incredible interviews, and you're welcome. I'm so glad I can do it. But he asked, Steve, any chance we can get another Sex Pack album soon?
Well, Jeff and I aren't speaking right now. We're kind of we're on the outs. There was an argument over I think it was some word. Anyway, yeah. So Sax Pack, until Jeff resolves this issue with me, there'll be no more Sax Pack. I'm kidding.
That's cool.
So
I'm available, so just let me know.
yeah. No, Jeff and I are actually we will be making another record.
Wow.
So just in case Jeff, you didn't know that, we will be making another record. Yeah, we're gonna start working on music. Jeff, I know, is finishing up his new record, which is going to be amazing, and I'm starting my new record. So once that happens, then I think we're going to be focusing on doing a collaboration. So that's definitely forthcoming.
That's awesome. So yeah, Xavier, you heard it first from Steve himself. And let me look at some other comments. This is Nathan. Nathan is asking, Steve, do you pre-write all your solos? I'm assuming this is for recording. Or if so, is it in your head or in notation software?
The shorter answer is no. I do not pre-write any of my solos. I improvise them.
Mm.
And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but that's the way I do it. It's funny because the closest I'll ever get to that is sometimes you'll do a take and you'll play a lick or something, or you'll play a phrase, and there's something about it that wasn't quite right, but you really liked it. You know what I mean? You'll play
Yeah.
and you're like, oh man, that 4 bars was really killing, but I rushed that one thing, so I want to perform it. And I'll go back and I'll try to learn this lick that I just made up, right? And so I'll learn it, and I'll realize that when I try to play it again, it doesn't have anywhere close to the vibe it had when I was just improvising, right?
Mm.
And so 9 times out of 10, I'll just say, all right, forget it. Let's just do another one, because I'm never going to duplicate the spontaneity of that, by learning it and then performing it. It just loses some magic. Sometimes I'm successful at that, but most of the time it's just like, no, it was, the inspiration has come and gone. So, but yeah, no, it's all just kind of what I'm feeling at the time.
Yeah, cool. Steve, maybe if I could add to that, when it comes to your recording sessions and especially the sections where it's solos, are you usually like a one take type of guy, always try to take the first take, or, do you generally do many, many takes and then listen back and decide after that?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Sometimes, I'll, you know, again, 9 times out of 10, the first one is usually the one. You know, you're fresh, you're unencumbered by stress and anxiety. You're just kind of in it, and you're inspired, and you're just going for it. Um, I'll do a bunch of different takes just to see if there's any other, you know, stuff in there. Sometimes I'll go back and fix a phrase or two,
Mm.
if just like, or if there's just like, I rushed that second note. I'm going to try and just grab that bar.
Mm.
Um, but really, what I try to do is I try to get a whole solo. Um, but so it really varies. There's no one formula. Sometimes it's one take, and then I'll try other ones, and I'll go back and
Mm.
be like, no, this was the one. Sometimes it feels like I'm performing surgery on it. Going back and like, oh, I'm gonna just grab this bar. Well, then I'll listen back. It's like, oh, maybe that note was a little bit rushed. I better grab that.
Mm.
Um, so it's all over the place.
Cool.
Depending on the tune, depending on the day, depending on how much patience I have, how you know how much faith in my ability to come up with things that are cool. I don't know. It's
Cool.
kind of all
Yeah.
over the place.
Thank you for answering that. And maybe now might be a good time to segue into the first question I actually wanted to start with after you played your first song was about record deals, record labels. So now I think we are in the day and age where, many artists are choosing to go the independent route, release it themselves, fund it themselves. Was this something that you were considering, let's say before taking on this, new album? Like, do you think about these things a lot?
Yeah. So I think that working with a label is a really personal kind of decision that you have to make based upon what your goals are, and also whether or not you feel that you have the time, energy, effort, and resources to do everything yourself. Because there's a ton of moving parts. And as when Jeff comes on your show, Jeff has made records for labels, and he's also been his own label, and he's really got it figured out. But I know that it was a challenge for him to really kind of learn all that you need to learn, and invest in everything that you need to invest in, and also to gain expertise in all these different aspects of production, distribution, finding a platform for distribution, understanding royalties, and promotion, and what are the right outlets, and when and how much to spend, and all the marketing, all the promotion, the distribution, everything, and also fundraising, and all that. For me, I've always been with labels, and I've always had great experiences. I've been very, very lucky. I also spend a lot of time teaching at university, and because I do that, um, I honestly kind of like the fact that my label is there, and there are people who are really talented in a lot of different areas, doing those things that are in their specialty. So there are people who are marketers. There are people who are, really great, business to business and distribution people. There are really great, artistic directors and publicity and radio people. So that helps me do what I do as a musician, but also helps me still, commit to my students at the university, which is a really, really important part of my life. So the balance for me is definitely works. Um, could I, if I did everything myself, the opportunity to earn more revenue is absolutely there, because basically when you have a record deal, depending on the kind of deal you make, if it's a joint partnership, you could we have a 50-50 split, but in the traditional record deals, oftentimes it's 85-15. excuse me, in the favor of the record label. And a lot of that is because they're taking care of a lot of the work. They're also taking the entrepreneurial risk by investing in the record. Um, and so in today's, if I was to start all over again, if I was a new artist today, I would absolutely be independent.
Wow.
Because that's really where you can have a career that you can realize some significant revenue streams by owning all of the owning the whole equation.
Mm.
Um, but for me, it works because the balance works, and I have a great relationship with my label. They're really great. They're about the music. They're very committed to developing artists and sticking with them. Um, and so that works for me. But there's not one formula, and I think a lot of people are getting a lot of success and a lot of autonomy. Starting independent and kind of you know working that trajectory. Now there is a point in time where some artists will come to the attention of record labels because they've been really successful, independent. And at that point, they're going to have to, make the decision as to whether or not what the label can do for them is going to move them forward. Because anytime that you get into partnership with a label, there's going to be some, give and take. You're going to give up something to get something. And the good equation is, am I giving up, less than I'm, getting?
Yeah.
What I'm getting, is what I have to give up worth it in terms of the return that I'm going to get through the relationship? And if you can be confident that that's the case, and that the label is going to help you grow and attain the next level that you may not be able to do yourself, then that's a good, time to choose maybe to affiliate with the right partnership. But I think that people are getting very, very successful doing it themselves, and I think that there's an equation that works there.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing about that. That's something that I've always been thinking about, and especially when I was working on my second album, I was actually, I sent my demos to all the smooth jazz labels, and yeah, surprisingly, I had three offers, and three very different offers, and I really had to, it's a good problem to have, and I had to really, really make tough decisions. So, as of now, I decided, I decided back then, this was earlier in the year, that, I would do it independently because, like you said, I weighed everything out and I don't feel like, I was getting a good deal or fair deal. And of course, I understand, I'm a new artist, not based in the US, just based really far away in terms of live shows and all. It gets a bit harder. And I totally understood all of that. But yeah, it was a difficult decision, So yeah, I've always wanted to, and I try to ask this question to as many people and to always get their feedback, So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And maybe the next lead on question would be about you, as a professor, with your job in the university. Was it something that you actively sought out, or the opportunity arrived and you took it?
Well, it's a funny story. So, around 2005, I think it was 2005, 2006. Correct me if I'm wrong. Someone knows. I had finished my. Let's see, which record was it? I can't remember, but I got dropped from my record. I think I got dropped from Warner Brothers. I had made three records, two for Atlantic and one for Warner Brothers, and then Time Warner AOL merger happened, and I was a casualty. And I thought to myself, okay, this is a good run. I made three records, and that was fun. What else am I going to do? And while I was touring, because I have a background in business, and I was a touring musician, people that I went to school with or people that I knew would invite me to speak to college students when I was in town. And it was really, at first it was really intimidating. It's like, what am I going to say? What do you want to know? What can I possibly tell you? I don't even, I'm trying to figure it out myself, right? I started talking to college students, and it was really great because I realized, how much they needed to know about this business and how much, um, you know, they weren't able to really experience yet. And if I could give them a little bit of insight, from my experience and what I was going through as a musician, as a local musician, as a recording artist, maybe that would help them along the way. So it really was really fun to do. And so when I got dropped from Warner, I figured, okay, I have a background in business, and maybe I'll look for a gig teaching in university. It just so happened that a bunch of places were looking for music business people, and so I had a couple offers. Ended up going to work for Columbia College in Chicago, and ended up running their music business program for a number of years. And then, like literally, when I accepted the job, I got another record deal, and I got signed with EMI. Actually, it was Murata, and then they were acquired by Blue Note. And so, I was out of a record deal for about a year. I got a job as a college professor, and then I got another record deal. But I never stopped being a college professor. So, and I never stopped recording. So, I've been doing both of them ever since. So, teaching at university was supposed to be my fallback job because I got dropped from my label, and I didn't think I was going to get another record deal, and I ended up getting another record deal and continuing teaching and really loving it and figuring out how to make both of them work, and it's really been great.
Nice. That's pretty amazing. Would you ever see yourself, could you ever see yourself just being a full-time, musician, touring musician, and not do your day job?
Well, it's funny because I for most of my career I was a full-time musician, and I didn't intend to get a day job. I didn't intend to get a university job.
Yeah.
But the thing that's really cool about it is, because of what I do and what I teach, and I have really amazing and supportive colleagues, I feel like the two just are naturally necessary for one another. Because being out and playing and touring and making records and kind of being in this business really helps me be a better teacher. And being a teacher helps me be a better musician and a better business person. So it's really reinforcing. It's kind of a virtuous cycle. You know what I mean? So the two work really well together. I could honestly see myself doing either one. But I really am fortunate, and I really love the fact that I get to do them both together because I think they're like really two pieces of a puzzle for me.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, I think definitely that synergy is there, and especially it's music business. I guess if you are a professor of like geography, and then a touring musician, that might be slightly more different. But yeah. Like, did I know you studied business in a university, did you take music modules as well, or it was just purely business?
Well, I started out as an undergrad as a music major. That's where I studied with
Okay.
with Fred Hemke. And I ended up getting a degree in economics. But really, most of the time I spent in undergrad was in music. And then I went to business school for my master's degree, and then my doctorate is actually not in music; it's in organization development and kind of the study of individuals in organizations.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's kind of funny. I've probably spent more time studying, not music formally, than than music formally.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I didn't know that whole path, which is pretty cool. I think I have a friend here in Singapore who studied in, I think, Boston University. Great saxophonist. But went down that business route as well, and now doing great in his job. over here and playing gigs, just whenever he wants, basically. So yeah, really interesting to think about. And I guess the take home is also for anyone who is watching, it doesn't mean that you have to, have a university degree in music or only study music. I think everything is all aligned. Yeah, like my wife is a business major as well in university. Never did music formally. But yeah, it all works out, and we always say that actually we might, yeah, I didn't as well, so we actually feel fortunate that we didn't just go down the music only route and dived into learning a lot of the business aspects, which really comes in handy in this day and age. So yeah, and I thought you would be the perfect person to ask about this, that synergy between music and business. And yeah, thank you so
Well, I mean,
much.
I mean, it's very rare that you're going to be able to play music and not have to deal with any of the commercial aspects of it. That's a that would be an amazing gig, but there are very few of those. And it's funny because I thought when I got my first record deal, it's like, oh great, there's a big organization that'll now take care of everything, and all I have to do is worry about the art, and I was never more wrong, because it was just most of the time I spent on the business aspects, whether it was touring, planning tours, figuring out where to tour, talking to agents about venues and offers and capacities and strategy and releases, and what song goes to radio, and what kind of marketing, imaging, promotion, uh, and what are the kind of offshoots, and what else can we do, and what's connected, and how can we bolster the brand, and come on, they go hand in hand. That's why it's called the music business. And
Mm,
if you're a good business person, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily a bad, or a bad musician, or that you're
mm,
not committed to the craft.
mm,
But the minute that you want people to listen to what you're doing, you're you put on a business hat. So um, the more you can be versed, and the more that you can kind of understand the landscape of it all, and navigate it, and be in control of kind of your own destiny with regard to understanding what you want to do, what you want to put out there, what are the levers that are available to you, what are the
mm,
resources you have, how can you utilize them in the best possible way. It all works together. So
mm.
and most there's, the greatest musicians in the world. Some of them were horrible, horrible business people. We
Yeah.
heard about them,
Yeah.
but unfortunately, uh, by sometimes by no fault of their own, unfortunately.
Mm,
But some of the there's some really really amazing musicians who are just astonishingly fantastic business people.
mm. Yeah. How do you juggle both responsibilities? So I assume if you have to teach the whole week, does that mean, when the shows come in, you generally do those that are only on the weekend and fly out and come back? Has that been a challenge?
Well, no, actually, the schedule works beautifully. And you don't teach all week. Like, it's not like a 9 to 5 thing. You have your classes, you have your students, you have your responsibilities, and to those students, and your coursework and all that stuff. But it's
Mm,
not necessarily like you clock in at 9 and you leave at 5. It's kind of not the gig.
mm,
So there's a lot of flexibility. I have the luxury of kind of managing my time the way I need to manage it, and plus so much of me doing my job well has to do with me being you know doing my other job well, meaning being an artist and making music and touring and promoting and marketing, and all of that. So to me, again, it's really a continuum. It's all the same thing. It all
mm,
reinforces
mm,
everything. So I never really feel like one comes into conflict with the other.
mm. Nice. Yeah, that's super, super cool. And I'm gonna sidetrack a bit, but are you using a Audio Technica mic by any chance?
Yeah, this is also something I never use. Um, this is a what is it, 4041? If Jeff Kasho is still there, he probably knows what this is.
The funny
Um,
thing is, let me pull up my mic.
Oh, are you using this too?
I think so. You know, that looks exactly like a 4040 Audio
Oh yeah,
Technica.
maybe that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I mean, obviously I've been looking at it the whole time, but it just never struck me that, hey, we might be using the exact same microphone. That's crazy. Have you been using that for a while?
No, I've been using it for about 2 weeks. I had it for a while because when we made the last Sax Pack record, we decided that we would all use this. We weren't able to be
Wow.
in the studio together for all of the recording, so we decided we would all use the same microphone to record, and this is the one we decided on. And then I kind of
Wow.
put it away. I have a C12 VR kind of back there, and not the silver one. That's
Hmm.
a cheap USB mic.
Yeah.
But and I always record on that. But I threw this up to do something really quick, and I was just like, hey man, this sounds pretty good. So I'm kind of digging it.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I didn't expect that as well. You know, I just got this a few weeks ago as well. I was using for many years a vintage AKG, 414
Uh
BULS,
huh.
which I recorded my first album on. Paul Brown had one, and so I just bought the same exact one. But we've been great friends with Audio Technica, the guys at Audio Technica. I mean, I just love their products. And this mic is like a quarter of the price of my vintage AKG. So a lot of people have been asking me, where can I get it? And I was like, it's not even for sale anymore. That AKG, and you have to find it. Online, and that's risky as well, so I'm really surprised that you guys all recorded on this, because it's a relatively inexpensive mic. I think it would be in US dollars probably like 300 US dollars.
Yeah, it's about $300.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
it's really crazy, and I've been loving it, and some people say it's even better than my AKG. So this is
Wow.
really cool. So shout out if the guys at Audio Technica Singapore are listening in. I didn't script this as well. And that's really cool. And of course, I mean, if you can sound amazing on that, it just says everything. So yeah, and
I, I
actually,
think
mm.
I think the thing that's making it sound really good is Zoom. Zoom just that
Yeah.
magic, that magic that kind of puts on your sound. That's the
Yeah.
real deal, right?
Yeah, you're gonna make their share price go up, just after this. So yeah, and actually because my shop we stock this mic because I think it's great, and I just sold, yeah, three like 2 weeks ago. So those of you who are watching who have this, Steve is using it as well, and so yeah, that's a pretty interesting concept when you're saying the whole of Sexpack deciding to use the same mic, because you guys would all sound so different. So does but the mic, I guess, would just tie in everything. Is that a usual practice for your Sexpack recordings?
Well, it's funny because the first Sax Pack record we all stood around one microphone. So
Wow.
seriously, we kind of made that decision, and we were just like, no, man, let's do it for real. We literally stood around one
Wow.
microphone and played into it. And then when it was time for solos, we got out of each other's way, uh, physically, um, and we've always kind of attempted to kind of keep that spirit alive. But sometimes just schedules and circumstances don't allow us all to be in the same room. And I don't know if it was frankly, I don't know if it was necessarily like a, a desire to have continuity, or we just all wanted to buy some new stuff. But I think we probably made a decision based upon well, let's at least have something consistent. So
Mm.
rather than all of us playing into the same physical mic, we'll each play at least into the same type of microphone. So that's kind of how we made this happen. And I think Kim was the one who had was using this mic pretty regularly, and we're like, all right,
Wow.
I don't have one of those, and Jeff didn't have one of those, so we're like, that'd be cool to have one of those. We'll do that.
Hmm. That's
Here we go.
really,
And then I dug it out, and I kind of like it.
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
Yeah. Sounded really good. No different from any other mics you're using before, I guess. You know, really, really, really close. And I
Well,
think, yeah.
I think if I did a shootout with my C12, I think the C12 would definitely win. But you know, I think it sounds great. I think it's a
Mm.
you know it's a very very approachable and accessible microphone, and for tenor I don't know, you know, I can't speak to any other instruments, you know, through it, but tenor saxophone seems to sound pretty all right through it.
Yeah, definitely sounds great. And I think Jeff is using a AKG 414 as well. You know, so like him having this as I have to ask him about that as well. So yeah, I think yeah, if I were to compare to my AKG, I've actually never done a side by side comparison. But for me, even if the AKG sounded a lot better, I guess I would still recommend this mic. Because at the price point and it's just so readily available, I think yeah, it's definitely something I would recommend to people who are just starting out, wanting to get their recordings, which is a lot of people. I think worldwide, as we were speaking about the Cam Link earlier, it's just sold out worldwide, and mics, USB mics, you name it, headphones. I love this Audio Technica open back headphones. Yeah, but it's just so hard to get nowadays, So yeah, but I think price point is important because microphones is a crazy world. You can go up to just ridiculous amounts, but when something this I was really blown away. Yeah, once I blew into it, I was like, wow. For that quarter of the price, so
Does a good job.
yeah,
Not bad.
cool. And I really thank you, Steve, for being so gracious with your time. I just had a glance. I just had a glance just now, and it's almost going to be 2.5 hours.
I know, it's crazy.
It's crazy.
That's my bedtime, man.
Way past, and I'm really so grateful and for your time and your sharing and your music. And man, I wish I could go on longer. Maybe we could talk about a second episode, a follow-up episode. But man, I'm so thankful for you, to be so gracious. And I think some of the questions might not be the easiest to answer, but I'm so glad that you're willing to share. And yeah, maybe do you think you would like to play one last song for us to close off this session?
Yeah, sure, man. Let's see. How about we'll end with the beginning. I'll play my very first song. I'll play
Wow.
When I Think of You.
Wow, that's amazing.
If my read has right out.
Thank you so much, Steve. Another nice fade out tune.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Gotta love the fade.
yeah. Thank you
Sorry
so
about
much.
that.
Yeah.
I played a clam in like some eight. I'm not used to playing with it in a in a situation where there are armrests.
Yes, I've had that problem before. So now I'm using a high stool with no armrest. Yes, it does get
Yeah,
in the way.
I didn't really think that through.
Still sounds great. Still sounds great, man. Thank you, Steve. And that was wonderful. To be able to be transported back to your. Was that your first radio single?
Yeah, that was the very first one. Yeah, I
Man,
wrote that with
that's.
Brian Culbertson and a
Mm,
guitar player named Jerry Johnson
mm.
in 1997.
Wow. Wow. So that's
Yeah.
yeah, man, that was I think that no better way to end off the show than that. So guys who are still watching, thank you for staying with us for 2.5 hours. And I see some of you joining in late like Ben. No problem. And that's the thing I love about YouTube. It stays on. You can go and rewatch any, and I think there's so many nuggets. Steve, actually while I was talking to you, I never thought of doing this before, but actually, I think I'm gonna do a follow up video on my YouTube channel, just dissecting all the great knowledge and sharing and wisdom that you and also all the previous artists have shared. I think because to be honest, like I'm in the moment right here, but there are many other elements. I'm juggling all the cameras, the toggling of that and the sound and my phone, the chat. So I don't think I gained absorbed every single thing that was shared. So I'm gonna rewatch this for myself so I can finally sit down as an audience member. But I know there's so much wisdom in there, and thank you so much. And yeah, do you guys who are watching, do look out for that. I think I'm gonna dissect every single episode and every single guest, and they are sharing and compile all my take homes from that episode and put it in a separate video of just condensed knowledge. So thank you so much, Steve. Like I didn't think of doing that until like literally, halfway through the show. I was like, there's too much good nuggets. So I'm gonna, pick them out and then do a separate video for that. So I mean, I really, really appreciate you and your time. And for those who are watching, also, I left a link to Steve's website. So do click on it. You can purchase his album Gratitude right there in the link. Right in the front page. So if you really enjoy, if you're new to his music as well, do check it out. I think you will not be disappointed. I was telling my wife that day, like, your music is like the essence of smooth jazz tenor saxophone, and I truly believe that, from the bottom of my heart. So if you want to know how smooth jazz, contemporary jazz sounds like on the tenor saxophone, look no further. So really, do check out. I put the link in there, so guys, do click on it, and you can get his album from Steve. And thank you so much again. And Steve, any last words for for people watching, over here in Asia?
Oh man, well, first of all, thank you for having me. This was really great. I'm so
No
glad you're doing this
problem.
show and having all of these different players on, and also sharing your music with everybody. So it's been a blast. It's really been a lot of fun, and the questions were really great. Some of them really made me think about some things I hadn't thought about for a while. So that was really great. So I got a lot out of it, and just I'm so happy that this technology allows us to
Mm,
communicate, to kind of be with each other virtually, and we live so far apart, but it's
yeah.
kind of cool just to hang out and be able to be part of you know the rest of the rest of the world through this technology. So it's so
Yeah.
cool, and I'm glad you're doing this. So thanks so much.
Cool. Thank you so much for being here. And I don't think this will be our last conversation. And I'm so glad we got to connect. And that might be the silver lining from this whole pandemic period. Because if things were normal, I think timing wise, and your availability might be a lot harder to for us to schedule something as well. So it's all really good. And thank you so much. And for those of you who are watching, look forward forward. I have many more amazing guests. I have Andy Snitzer next week about the same time. I need to go, and I realized I haven't firmed up the exact timing with him. So I'll firm it up for him. And then we have Dave Kors coming up the week after. So really excited to have, literally all my saxophone heroes, and all of them have been so gracious, and I think we're going to learn a lot from each and every one of them. So thank you so much for watching, and then I'll see you at the next episode.